20 years ago, Sergeant Daniel Hayes vanished without a trace during a military mission. His family mourned him, the world forgot him, and hope slowly faded away. But when the missing soldier suddenly returned home after 2 decades, he brought with him a shocking secret powerful enough to destroy lives and enemies who would do anything to keep it buried. Before we dive into today's incredible story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and become part of our growing YouTube family. If you enjoy emotional stories filled with mystery, suspense, and unforgettable twists, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And while you're here, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. We love hearing from you. Now get comfortable, because the story you're about to hear is one that will leave you speechless. Let's begin. 20 years ago, the entire town of Willow Creek gathered at the train station to welcome home their local heroes returning from overseas deployment. Families held flowers. Children waved handmade flags. Reporters stood nearby, ready to capture emotional reunions. But for one family, that reunion never came. Sergeant Daniel Hayes never stepped off the train. At first, military officials assured everyone that there had been a delay. Then they explained that Daniel had gone missing during an operation near a remote border region. Search teams had been deployed immediately. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Eventually, the heartbreaking phrase arrived. Missing in action. Emily Hayes sat at her kitchen table, staring at the official letter for what felt like hours. Their 4-year-old son, Noah, played with toy soldiers across the living room floor, too young to understand why his mother's eyes remained red every morning. "When is Daddy coming home?" Noah asked. Emily forced a smile. "Soon," she whispered. She wasn't sure whether she was reassuring Noah or herself. The following years tested Emily in ways she had never imagined. Friends encouraged her to move on. Family members gently suggested that Daniel was probably gone. But Emily refused to remove his photographs from the walls. She refused to stop celebrating his birthday. Every Christmas, she wrapped one extra gift and placed it beneath the tree. Hope became both her greatest strength and her deepest burden. Meanwhile, Noah grew older. At school, other children made Father's Day cards while he quietly sat alone. During baseball games, he searched the stands for a face he barely remembered. As adolescence arrived, unanswered questions transformed into anger. Why didn't he come back? Noah demanded one evening. Emily struggled for words. He would have if he could. "You don't know that," Noah snapped. The argument ended with Noah storming upstairs. Emily remained seated at the kitchen table long after midnight. The truth was simple. She didn't know, and uncertainty hurt more than grief. Years passed. Noah graduated high school, then college. He became a paramedic, dedicating himself to helping others during their worst moments. People praised his compassion. Few recognized that his empathy had been shaped by absence, by understanding what it meant to wait for help that never arrived. Although successful professionally, Noah built emotional walls few people ever crossed. Relationships ended quickly. Friendships remained superficial. Loss had taught him that attachment carried risk. 20 years after Daniel disappeared, life in Willow Creek settled into familiar routines. Emily worked at the local library. Noah rented a small apartment near the hospital. Daniel's photograph still occupied its place above the fireplace. Then everything changed. Rain poured steadily against Emily's windows one Tuesday afternoon. She had just finished shelving returned books when someone knocked on her front door. Assuming it was a neighbor, she opened it without hesitation. A stranger stood beneath the porch light. He appeared to be in his early 50s. Gray streaked his dark hair. Scars marked his hands. His posture reflected years of discipline, though exhaustion weighed heavily upon his expression. His eyes studied Emily carefully. Tears immediately formed within them. "Emily?" he whispered. She froze. No stranger should have known her name. "I'm sorry," the man continued. "I know this sounds impossible." Emily gripped the doorframe. Her instincts urged caution, yet something about his voice stirred distant memories. "My name is Daniel Hayes." The world stopped. Rain continued falling. Thunder echoed in the distance. Emily stared at him without blinking. "No," she whispered. Daniel swallowed hard. "You used to hide chocolate bars inside the cereal cabinet because you thought I'd never find them." Emily's breathing quickened. During our first date, we got caught in a thunderstorm near Miller's Lake. Tears streamed down her face. You wore blue gloves on our wedding day because your hands kept getting cold. Emily's knees nearly gave out. Only Daniel could have known those things. Yet logic rejected the possibility standing before her. Daniel stepped back respectfully. I don't expect you to believe me immediately. He reached into his coat pocket. Carefully removing a faded photograph, he handed it toward her. Emily recognized it instantly. It had been taken during their honeymoon. She had written something on the back. Turning it over, her heart shattered. Forever starts here. Love, Emily. Her handwriting. Her words. The photograph slipped from trembling fingers. Daniel caught it before it touched the ground. Emily covered her mouth. After 20 years. Her husband had returned. Hours later, Noah arrived after receiving frantic phone calls from his mother. He entered the house expecting medical emergency personnel. Instead, he found Emily sitting beside an unfamiliar man. Noah stopped moving. What's going on? Emily looked toward him. Her voice shook. He says he's your father. Silence consumed the room. Noah studied the stranger carefully. Disbelief quickly evolved into frustration. This isn't funny. Daniel stood slowly. Noah, don't. The single word carried decades of unresolved pain. Daniel nodded. You loved dinosaurs when you were little. Every night, you'd ask me to read the same book about prehistoric animals. Noah crossed his arms. Anyone could find that information. You fell off your bicycle when you were 6, Daniel continued softly. You were more upset about scratching the bike than hurting your dead knee. Noah's expression shifted. You cried during your first day of kindergarten because another child looked lonely. Emily stared at Noah. Those details had never been shared publicly. Daniel took another breath. The last thing I promised you before deployment was that we'd go fishing together when I got home. Noah's face paled. That memory belonged only to him. Without another word, he turned and walked outside. Emily moved to follow him. Daniel stopped her. Give him time. Emily looked at the man she'd mourned for 2 decades. What happened to you? Pain flickered across Daniel's features. I'll explain everything, but not tonight. That evening, Daniel remained in the guest room. Sleep proved impossible. Every creak within the house reminded him of time lost. Photographs lining the hallway documented milestones he had missed. Noah's graduations, birthdays, family vacations. Entire chapters of life existed without him. Around midnight, Daniel retrieved an old metal box from his duffel bag. The container appeared worn from years of travel. Its contents had remained protected through deserts, forests, and countless temporary shelters. He unlocked it carefully. Inside rested documents, photographs, encrypted notes, evidence, the truth behind his disappearance. Daniel examined the materials silently. For 20 years, these secrets had dictated every decision he made, every sacrifice, every goodbye. Returning home had always been his dream, but dreams rarely survived contact with reality. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Emily stood in the doorway. You should be resting. Daniel offered a small smile. I've had trouble sleeping. Emily entered cautiously. For several minutes, neither spoke. Eventually, Emily asked the question occupying both their minds. Why didn't you come home? Daniel lowered his gaze. Because people would have died. Emily stared at him. What does that mean? Daniel closed the metal box. It means the story everyone believes about my disappearance isn't true. Fear settled within Emily's chest. Daniel. Before he could answer, headlights illuminated the driveway. Both turned toward the window. An unfamiliar black vehicle had stopped outside the house. Its engine remained running. Daniel's expression changed instantly. The warmth that had briefly returned vanished. Years of survival instincts resurfaced. He moved away from the window. How many people know I'm here? Emily's pulse accelerated. Only Noah. Why? Daniel grabbed the metal box. Because if they found me already... His voice trailed off. Outside, another vehicle pulled alongside the first. Daniel's face drained of color. 20 years earlier, he had disappeared while protecting a dangerous secret. Now that secret had followed him home. And this time, the people hunting him. They were never supposed to find me. The words hung heavily in the air as Daniel stepped away from the window, his expression transformed by fear and determination. Emily stared at him. What do you mean? She whispered. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved quickly through the room, checking locks and drawing curtains. His actions were precise, practiced. This wasn't panic. It was training. Years of surviving under constant threat. Outside, the black vehicles remained parked near the house. Daniel tightened his grip around the old metal box. "Emily," he said carefully, "I need you to trust me." Emily shook her head. "You disappeared for 20 years. You walked back into our lives without explanation. And now strangers are sitting outside my house. I don't know how to trust you anymore." Daniel lowered his eyes. "You have every right to feel that way." Those words surprised her. There were no excuses, no attempts to justify the pain he had caused, only regret. Across town, Noah sat alone in his apartment, staring at the photograph his mother had sent him earlier. It showed a younger version of Daniel holding baby Noah in his arms. For years, Noah had imagined countless versions of his father, a hero, a coward, a victim, a stranger. Now he didn't know what to believe. His phone rang. "Emily, you need to come home," she said urgently. Something in her voice made him leave immediately. When Noah arrived 20 minutes later, he found Daniel seated at the kitchen table. The metal box rested beside him. Emily stood nearby with folded arms. Daniel looked older beneath the harsh kitchen light. More fragile. Noah remained near the doorway. "What now?" he asked coldly. Daniel inhaled slowly. "You deserve the truth." He opened the box. Inside were photographs, military reports, maps covered in handwritten notes, and several small data drives. Noah frowned. "What is this?" "The reason I never came home." Daniel began speaking. 20 years earlier, his unit had been assigned what appeared to be a routine operation near a conflict zone. Their mission involved locating a missing supply convoy. Instead, they uncovered something unexpected. Weapons shipments, illegal transactions, evidence suggesting that powerful individuals were secretly supplying dangerous groups for profit. "We reported our findings through official channels," Daniel explained. "We thought the right people would investigate." But someone warned them first. Daniel's team had been ambushed shortly afterward. Several soldiers died. Daniel survived by chance. Before escaping, he recovered evidence connecting influential figures to the operation. "I thought I could expose them," Daniel admitted. "But I quickly realized people inside the system were involved." Noah crossed his arms. "So you ran?" Daniel flinched. "It told. First I thought I'd be gone for weeks." His voice softened. "Then weeks became months, and every time I tried to return, someone else disappeared. People who had offered assistance. People connected to the investigation. Daniel learned quickly that staying hidden protected those he loved." Emily wiped away tears. "You decided that for us?" Daniel looked toward her. "I know. You missed everything. I know." Noah's anger erupted. "My first baseball game." Daniel remained silent. "My graduation." Silence. "The funeral when Grandpa died." Daniel lowered his head. "I know. The years Noah had buried beneath emotional walls finally surfaced. You don't get to walk back in here and expect things to be okay." Daniel nodded. "I don't." That answer startled Noah. No defensiveness. No demands for forgiveness. Only accountability. "I can't change what happened," Daniel said quietly. "But I can tell you the truth." Noah stormed outside. The cool night air did little to calm him. He had spent 20 years believing his father was dead. Now the man sat inside their home asking for understanding. Part of Noah wanted to hate him. It felt easier. But another part remembered the stories Emily used to tell. How Daniel volunteered during floods. How he helped elderly neighbors repair fences. How he dreamed of teaching Noah to fish. Heroes weren't perfect. They made impossible choices. Inside the house, Emily sat across from Daniel. "Do you know what waiting does to people?" she asked. Daniel's eyes glistened. "Every birthday, I wondered if you'd come through the door." Emily's voice cracked. "I hated you." Daniel nodded. "I know. I loved you." His breathing faltered. "I know. And I stopped myself from moving on because I couldn't let go of hope." Tears rolled down Daniel's face. "That wasn't fair to you." For the first time in 2 decades, Emily saw something beyond the mystery surrounding Daniel's disappearance. She saw guilt. Profound, devastating guilt. Daniel had survived, but survival had cost him everything. Days passed. Federal investigators arrived after reviewing portions of Daniel's evidence. The story grew larger than anyone anticipated. Powerful individuals, Hidden networks, crimes concealed for decades. News organizations began asking questions. Meanwhile, Noah struggled internally. At work, he comforted grieving families. He encouraged patience during emergencies, yet he couldn't extend those same qualities toward his own father. One afternoon, Noah returned home unexpectedly. He found Daniel repairing a broken kitchen cabinet. "You still do that?" Noah asked. Daniel looked up. "Your grandfather taught me." Noah hesitated. "He taught me too." An awkward silence followed. Then Daniel handed him a screwdriver. For the next hour, they worked side by side. Not talking much, simply existing together. Eventually, Noah spoke. "Did you think about us?" Daniel stopped working. "Every day." "You could have written." "I did." Daniel retrieved several weathered envelopes from the metal box. "I just never sent them." Noah opened one carefully. Inside, Daniel had written about missing Noah's 10th birthday. Another described wondering whether Noah liked sports. A third apologized repeatedly. Noah fought tears. His father hadn't forgotten. He had carried their absence everywhere. That realization complicated everything Noah believed. Later that evening, Daniel stood alone on the porch. Emily joined him. "Do you regret coming back?" she asked. Daniel considered the question. "I regret waiting so long." Emily studied his profile. Age had changed him. Pain had changed him. But fragments of the man she'd married remained. "You've changed," she said. Daniel nodded. "So have you." Emily smiled sadly. "I had to." She had learned resilience, independence, strength she never wanted to possess. Perhaps Daniel's return wasn't about reclaiming the past. Perhaps it was about deciding whether healing remained possible. As night settled across Willow Creek, Daniel reviewed the evidence once more. The investigation was progressing, but danger hadn't disappeared. He noticed movement outside the house, a figure standing near the mailbox. Watching, Daniel's instincts screamed. He moved toward the window. The stranger slipped something into the mailbox before, disappearing into the darkness. Minutes later, Noah retrieved the envelope. Inside rested a single photograph. It showed Daniel during his years in hiding. Across the back, someone had written 5 chilling words. "We know where you are." Daniel's expression hardened. For 20 years, he'd protected his family by staying away. Now the people he'd escaped had brought the fight directly to Willow Creek. And this time, running might no longer be an option. Daniel carefully lifted the loose floorboard in the hallway and removed a weathered envelope sealed inside a waterproof pouch. Emily and Noah exchanged uneasy glances. "What is that?" Noah asked. Daniel stared at the envelope for several seconds before answering. "The reason I survived?" He placed it on the dining table. Inside were copies of documents, coded notes, photographs, and a list of names. Noah scanned the pages. Some belonged to businessmen, others held government positions. A few names were shockingly familiar. People celebrated in the community, people trusted by millions. Emily covered her mouth. "How many people were involved?" Daniel's expression darkened. "More than I wanted to believe." Noah looked toward his father. For the first time since Daniel's return, he noticed something beyond the scars and exhaustion. He saw courage, real courage, not the kind found in movies, the kind that required waking up every day carrying impossible responsibilities. "You protected this for 20 years?" Noah asked quietly. Daniel nodded. "I couldn't let the men who died during that mission be forgotten." Noah lowered the papers. 20 years earlier, Daniel had made a choice. A painful choice, but not a selfish one. He had sacrificed everything, familiar to prevent dangerous truths from disappearing forever. That realization didn't erase Noah's hurt. It simply complicated it. Over the next several days, investigators worked closely with Daniel. The evidence proved overwhelming. Cases once considered closed reopened. Journalists uncovered connections previously overlooked. The truth slowly emerged. People responsible for corruption would finally face accountability. Yet Daniel remained distant. Every unfamiliar vehicle caused tension. Every unexpected phone call triggered caution. One evening, Noah found his father sitting alone on the back porch. The old maple tree swayed gently nearby. "You okay?" Noah asked. Daniel managed a weak smile. "I've forgotten how to sit still." Noah sat beside him. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Noah asked the question he'd carried since childhood. "Were you scared?" Daniel laughed softly. Every single day. Noah frowned. But soldiers aren't supposed to be afraid. Daniel looked toward him. Fear isn't weakness. He paused. Sometimes courage means doing what's necessary despite being terrified. Noah considered those words carefully. Throughout his career as a paramedic, fear had accompanied many emergencies. He had simply learned to move through it. Perhaps courage looked different than he'd always imagined. Did you ever think about not coming back? Noah asked. Daniel's eyes grew distant. There were times I thought you'd all be better off without me. Noah's chest tightened. But then I'd remember your laugh. He smiled sadly. Or your mother's terrible singing. A surprised laugh escaped Noah. Mom can't sing. Daniel grinned. Exactly. The silence that followed felt different. Lighter. Healing rarely arrived dramatically. Sometimes it emerged through small conversations beneath evening skies. Weeks passed. The investigation expanded nationally. Several arrests followed. Communities once affected by the corruption network finally received long-awaited answers. Daniel's role remained largely confidential. He preferred it that way. After years spent surviving in shadows, he wanted something simple. Family dinners, morning coffee, conversations interrupted by laughter rather than danger. One Saturday afternoon, Emily found Daniel sorting through old boxes in the attic. He held Noah's childhood drawings carefully. You kept everything, he whispered. Emily folded her arms. I wasn't ready to let go. Daniel looked toward her. I don't deserve the grace you've shown me. Emily remained quiet. For 20 years, she'd imagined this reunion. Anger had dominated many versions, resentment too. But life had taught her unexpected lessons. People were complicated. Love didn't erase pain. Forgiveness didn't excuse harm. Both could exist simultaneously. You hurt us, Emily said honestly. Daniel lowered his head. I know. But surviving what you survived probably hurt you too. Tears filled Daniel's eyes. Emily stepped forward and embraced him. Not because everything had been fixed, because healing had finally begun. Months later, Noah invited Daniel to join him on a fishing trip, the same trip promised decades earlier. Neither acknowledged the significance aloud. They didn't need to. As sunlight reflected across the water, Noah adjusted his fishing line. You know, he said, I spent years being angry. Daniel stared at the lake. You had every right. I blamed you for everything. Daniel nodded. I understand. Noah hesitated, but holding on to anger started hurting me more than it hurt you. Daniel turned toward him. I'm sorry. Noah smiled faintly. I know. Those two words carried profound meaning. Understanding, acceptance, the willingness to move forward despite unanswered questions. As evening approached, Noah finally caught his first fish of the day. His excitement reminded Daniel of the little boy he'd once known. Only now that boy had become a compassionate, resilient man. You'd have been proud of him, Emily once told Daniel. She'd been wrong. Daniel wasn't proud of who Noah had become despite his absence. He admired who Noah had become through adversity. Strength shaped by empathy. Pain transformed into purpose. Later that year, Willow Creek hosted a ceremony honoring local first responders and military families. Daniel initially refused attendance. Public attention made him uncomfortable. But Noah convinced him. You've spent 20 years hiding, Noah said. You don't have to anymore. During the ceremony, Noah stepped toward the microphone. I grew up believing heroes never failed, he began. Then life taught me otherwise. The audience listened attentively. Real heroes make mistakes. He glanced toward Daniel. They carry regrets. His voice strengthened. But they continue choosing courage when fear tells them to quit. Daniel lowered his gaze. My father wasn't perfect, Noah continued. He missed years he'll never get back. Emotion thickened his voice. But he came home. Silence filled the room. And sometimes returning, physically, emotionally, spiritually, is the bravest choice a person can make. Applause gradually spread throughout the crowd. Daniel wiped tears from his face. After the ceremony, Emily handed him an old envelope she'd discovered months earlier. You wrote this shortly after Noah was born. Daniel carefully unfolded the letter. The familiar handwriting transported him decades into the past. If fate ever separates us, he had written, I hope my son grows into a man who chooses courage over fear and kindness over anger. Daniel looked toward Noah. The young man laughed alongside friends nearby. Compassionate, resilient, strong, everything Daniel had hoped. "You were right," Emily whispered. Daniel frowned. "About what?" "He became exactly the person you wanted him to be." Daniel smiled through tears. That evening, the Hayes family gathered around the dinner table. Stories flowed naturally. Laughter returned easily. The empty chair Emily had preserved for 20 years no longer symbolized absence. It represented endurance, hope, the extraordinary ability of imperfect people to rebuild what time had broken. After dinner, Daniel stepped outside alone. Stars illuminated the night sky above Willow Creek. The journey home had been far more difficult than he'd imagined. Forgiveness remained ongoing. Healing required patience. But for the first time in decades, peace felt possible. Footsteps approached behind him. Noah joined him beneath the porch light. "You know," Noah said, "we still haven't gone camping." Daniel smiled. "We haven't. We've got 20 years to make up for." Daniel looked toward his son. His family. His home. Some scars never disappeared completely. Yet they no longer defined the future. "Then we'd better get started," Daniel replied. Together, father and son looked toward tomorrow, not as strangers bound by shared blood, but as two men choosing, day by day, to rebuild what had once seemed impossible to recover. Because while secrets had separated them, love had brought them home. And sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't surviving the darkness. It's allowing yourself to step back into the light.